Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware, my name's Luke, and in today's review we're going to be taking a look at Skycadia on the Nintendo Switch, an arcade style dogfight sim which puts an emphasis on high score chasing, and sees you battling against bug-like enemy forces as one of 3 avian pilots. Now there's a distinct lack of decent dogfighters on the Switch, and I've covered a few pretty terrible ones, but this one looked pretty promising, and I want to say a quick thanks to the developer who provided me with a key for the game and a few extra keys to give away, so keep watching to see how you can win one. But for now, let's get right on into it and see what's what, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content and want to see more. So there's really not much to go by in terms of storyline with this one, but going by the eShop's description, we are playing as a group of bounty hunters heading out to take down some sky pirates. But beyond this and a few snippets of in-game dialogue, there's nothing story related to tie everything together, and I thought that was a bit of a shame. Skycadia features a story mode which includes 3 different characters to select from. Its enemies come in the form of flying bugs, including wasps, ladybugs and dragonflies, and the story adventure takes you to a variety of different locations, including the bug's homeland of Bugburg, so there is potential to include some lore here. But as it is, other than the visual differences, there's actually nothing setting one level apart from another, and no story elements in the story adventure mode, so to be honest, it could have just been named arcade mode. Now when it comes to gameplay, again the eShop description really needs some work, as it gives you nothing to go by in terms of the game's features. As I said though, the game comes with a story adventure mode, as well as an endless arcade mode which I'll touch on shortly. But the core gameplay mechanics of both of these are pretty much identical, and working your way through the story mode, you'll essentially be travelling from location to location, each of which has 3 stages and becomes progressively more difficult. If you've played any kind of dogfighter game before though, you'll know the score with this one. Fly around taking out enemies, collect the bounties on them by flying through the shower of coins that they drop, and kill all of the enemies in a level to proceed to the next one. And each new area tends to introduce a new type of enemy for you to deal with, which include light and heavy fighters which shoot back at you, smaller ships which chase you down and try to crash into you, and large motherships which act as spawners for smaller ones. In addition to these, there are also a few bosses to take down which turn out to be absolute bullet sponges, and while these enemies do add a little bit of variety, everything is still kept very simple. You just shoot them all down and try not to die. And I have to admit, the lack of depth did mean that things became pretty repetitive, and I really think that having something like enemy weak points to target or additional bullet patterns would have definitely helped spice things up a bit. Now there are 2 additional characters to unlock when you've earned a certain amount of bounty money, one of which flies slower but has more health, and the other is faster but has less health. And in addition to your standard machine gun, there are also 2 unlockable weapons, including a short-ranged shotgun-like one and a long-ranged sniper rifle, and again these add a little bit more variety, but they aren't game-changing and you'll likely have unlocked them all about halfway through the story mode, and so after this, the only value that bounties actually add are for chasing high scores, but the endless arcade mode is where you're going to be doing this. This mode is exactly as you'd expect, an endless number of enemies spawning, with the numbers increasing exponentially and random bosses spawning in every so often, and you just have to survive as long as possible and earn as much bounty money as you can. Now there's really not much else to say in terms of gameplay, and I could just sit here and criticise it for its simplicity and the issues that I'm about to mention, but it's clear that a lot of work has already gone into Skycadia, and so instead I'm going to talk about these issues that I found and provide some constructive feedback to the developer. So first let's talk about the way in which the game plays. Now, in the opening few levels, the dogfighting feels very much a core part of the gameplay, and you'll be taking down a few spawners before focusing on taking out the remaining fighter ships. But this formula quickly changes as you progress through the story, and it soon gets to the point where dogfighting is no longer an option due to the sheer amount of enemies you're up against. This not only has a negative impact on the frame rate, which for the most part is pretty solid, it also reduces it down to a game of cat and mouse, and this is primarily down to how enemy AI functions, as they're programmed to head directly for you and maintain level flight with you. Now, once you understand this, the game becomes trivial, and the swamp level hints at exactly how you can beat any level in the game regardless of how many enemies you're up against, and all I'll say is that it involves a lot of blue on blue action, and in fact exploiting the AI becomes the only way to realistically beat levels, as there are far too many to shoot down yourself. To solve this issue, I think firstly the spawn rates need to be drastically reduced to bring back the dogfighting elements. Enemies need to spawn further away from the nests to stop them instantly crashing into the back of them, and the spawners themselves should only close in on you to a certain point. Next, I'd recommend the floor and ceiling levels of flight be adjusted. Enemies shouldn't be able to fly below a certain level to stop them smashing into the ocean, and the player should be able to fly higher, as some of the bosses sit right at the ceiling, but if the player goes to that height, they're forced back and are basically a sitting duck. And additionally, if you fly to the arena's outer limit, you actually lose all control of your ship for about 5 seconds, which more often than not results in death, so this is also something which needs adjusting. Now, the AI is probably going to be a tough one to fix to stop them just heading directly towards the player, but one thing that I think could help would be to limit how fast they can actually turn, as they can currently turn on a dime, and I think extending the turning circle would really help with this. As I said, adding in a few weak points for larger enemies and additional bullet patterns would make combat much more interesting, as would a few more weapon types, as the shotgun is still far too weak and the sniper rifle requires too much precision, so introducing some lock-on mechanics, maybe with missiles, having something like a railgun which could penetrate multiple enemies, and lasers or wide-angle plasma cannons would really add to the overall variety. Finally, I think getting rid of the coins which drop and instead awarding points only for kills would make the leaderboards much more competitive, as I currently hold the top spot on the online leaderboards, and I actually obtained this high score playing endless arcade mode without even firing a single shot, which should tell you everything you need to know about the current system for score chasing. Now, like I said, I'm not having a dig at the developer here for a change, as I feel that Skycadia has a lot of potential and there is still fun to be had with it, but at the moment the issues that I've mentioned are really holding it back and leaving it feeling somewhat unfinished, and as things currently stand, I think that the price point of $20 is a little too high to justify the quality and quantity of gameplay on offer. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from buying the game, and in fact I think making a purchase would help support the dev with improving it, but people definitely need to be aware of what they're getting with this one, and hopefully the developer takes on board the points I've raised and continues to work on the game, as I feel it has the potential to be one of the best dogfighters on the platform. So I absolutely love the vibrant visual aesthetic of Skycadia, and the low poly art style really works to give it that retro feel, similar to something like Zelda The Wind Waker, and it also helps maintain a steady frame rate, at least until the enemy count gets out of hand. I think that the colour saturation could do with toning down a touch and a little extra shadowing or outlining added to make the models look a bit more defined, but overall really great stuff visually. On the audio side, we get a couple of retro sound effects for explosions, but not much else, and your ship's weapons don't even make a sound, so there definitely needs to be more variety here. But the music in Skycadia is upbeat and fits the gameplay nicely, so at least there's some decent tunes to play along to. All in all, not bad stuff. So when all's said and done, Skycadia is not a bad game, it just needs a bit more work to make it feel like a complete game. Story elements, changes to the core gameplay dynamics, enemy AI adjustments and weapon and character variety are all things which it would really benefit from, as are the changes to bounties, but overall it's a well put together Dogfighter. It performs well for the most part and has a lot of potential, and so when it comes down to my own personal rating, in its current state I'm going to be giving Skycadia 3 out of 5 stars. I think if the dev listens to the constructive criticism I've given, this one has the potential to become a hidden gem. But until then, if you want to try and take my top spot on the leaderboards and at the same time show your support for the game, then do consider buying it. And if you're watching before the 17th of September 2023, then you've got a chance of winning a key for the game. And all you have to do to enter into the draw for it is drop a comment down below with your own suggestions for improvements and ways that the gameplay could be enhanced. With that said though, we're just about done with this review, so be sure to drop a like if it helped you out, consider subscribing to the channel for more Switch reviews, and be sure to check out my Dollar Deals series where I highlight cheap eShop deals which may or may not be worth your time and cash. As always though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.